Super excited once again to have with us a stage that we can show and describe and you can experience Atmos, which I think is an amazing, amazing creative tool, whether you're working in post, whether you're working in music, episodic, whatever. On this stage, for the next few minutes, we're going to actually look at music. And let's talk a little bit about the gear. And we'd like to thank Dolby for coming out and tuning our array. We'd like to thank Apple for providing us a bleeding edge brand new Mac Pro. And a lot of other people, JBL for the speakers. But let's talk about what we have here. And then as we kind of go through the arc, what you can do to kind of start working in Atmos, because you certainly don't have to have this, but it's a beautiful thing. So what we have up here is that amazing new Mac Pro, which we're working on testing. We've got a multi-HDX card. We have a latest version of Pro Tools Ultimate. We have an S4, and you'll actually see me on that a little bit, kind of visualizing where the sound is in the room. We have what I kind of think of as the glue of the system is the matrix. The matrix is not only the I/O, it's got a bunch of DigiLink in it for one or multiple source machines, HDX, but it's also a router, and we're routing a bunch of stuff, Dante and Maddie and DigiLink, and it's also our monitor section. So it's a completely incredible user configurable monitor section with speaker tuning that we're doing, in this case, 914. So that's part of it, and then the front end to me is obviously Pro Tools Ultimate and the Surface, which is S4. And you're going to see all this on the camera. So that's kind of what we have, that's where we're starting. Let's, before I start kind of pushing buttons and moving things around, let's talk about what is this all about. We did a lot of work with Dolby, between Avid and Dolby, to make the working in Atmos easier, make it simpler, more efficient. And basically what you're seeing is one of the various views of the panner from Pro Tools. And one of the cool things is that you don't need a plugin. You can actually do the panning, object-based panning, directly from the Pro Tools panner, built into Pro Tools Ultimate. And then over there, we've got kind of a representation of all the fun stuff you're going to see on the touch screen of the Surface to be able to place things in 3D space. There's a lot more here. Communication with the renderer, being able to do re-recording, being able to switch between objects and buses. So a lot of work was really done to make this incredibly creative technology easier to use and work in. So a couple kind of just conceptual things just before we start. Atmos it's a 128 channel stream, and you get to choose how you use the resources. So you've got beds, kind of traditional. Think of a bed as a traditional bus, whether it's drums, keys, strings, percussion, or it could be music dialogue effects. But you've got at least one bed, and then the ability to build up to 118 objects. And the objects are really where the secret sauce happens, because you've got the ability to take a mono element or a stereo element and move it really precisely and really creatively throughout your space. And we'll talk about that a bit more. But we've got all of this, again, under the hood in Pro Tools Ultimate, the management of all of those beds and objects. And not only that, if you take a session and I just did this last night, that you're working on an Atmos and you take it somewhere else, and maybe they have a 5.1 setup, Pro Tools will actually automatically downmix everything for you. So it says, hey, I don't see a renderer. I'm just going to actually let you listen through whatever you have. And that could be your 5.1 design room. So it's a pretty neat feature. The objects are really that's really where it gets interesting for placing elements, for moving elements, for scaling elements. And I'm going to try to show you some examples of that sonically. But the beauty of this, again, is that it's all under the hood in Pro Tools Ultimate. You don't have to add additional pieces to make it work. There's some really cool stuff with regard to you've got X and Y and then Z. You can actually turn on these things like these auto elevation modes where maybe when I get the puck to the center of the room, I want it to kind of emulate a dome ceiling, and it'll automatically elevate up and then go down when it gets to the boundary periphery of the room. So there's a lot of really neat stuff under the hood that, again, it's really how do you want to use this creatively? You don't have to use every one of these options. There's the concept of scaling, basically sizing an object. So there's a really cool, I think Matt Lang shows some stuff where he's got some really nice textures ambient stuff that you can actually spread into multiple peripheral speakers using a size parameter, which I think is really cool. And then being able to kind of rope off, where do I want this not to go in terms of the zone masks, right? Being able to say, I only want it to go to the back half of the room, or only to the front, or to a 3. So again, a lot of different ways to kind of think about this. And then last but not least, there's a very vibrant third-party ecosystem, obviously, for Pro Tools, but you may not know that there's an equally vibrant collection of tools that work in Atmos in Pro Tools. And I'm going to show you a couple of them, like some of my favorites, like Stratus and Symphony from Isotope, which are immersive reverbs. They're incredible. But then also, we have to call out Justin from Cargo Cult, who makes amazing, slapper, spanner, stem cell, just great stuff. So there's a bunch of plugins that will work in multi-channel immersive in Pro Tools. Okay, so enough of keynoting for a bit. Let's take a look. We're going to switch over. And so now what you're seeing now is my session, which I'm going to introduce, and then me and kind of the S4 and being able to kind of navigate around, if you will. So this is a music session from Parachute called Young. We'll just play a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive into some concepts a bit here. Could it be young? Could it be young? I'm only could it be young? Okay, so what we have right now, on the left side, we have all the VCA masters, right? So if I want to listen to guitars, I've got all of the guitar elements here, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to actually spill those over into the right side. So now all the guitars that we're going to first look at are living over here. So what we want to first talk about is the concept of taking an element and placing it in the space. And so to do that, if you take a look at the screens, you're going to see this guitar, which is what you're seeing right here. We're going to solo that up, and we're going to attention that. And so what you're going to see, first of all, is let's just we'll solo this up, and I'm going to grab that, place it. Let's actually pop over to 3D view here for a second. And I want to show you kind of in the renderer also okay, so basically what are we doing here? We're placing an element in the space, and there's some Z, there's some elevation to it, right? And so you don't have to move everything, right? You can place judiciously elements within your song, within your session, and that can be very beneficial. But if it's a key element that you actually want to be dynamic, you can seamlessly move that through the space, okay? And that's going, in this case, kind of X, Y, and then there's already some elevation that was already there. And you saw that in the room. And that's the Dolby Atmos, that's the interface for the renderer that you're looking at. It shows all the objects and the movement of those elements in that space. We're going to come back to that. So placing something in X, Y, Z, or elevation, either placing it statically, or as you saw, moving it around, being able to place it with the panner, but then also being able to see and visualize right on the channel strip, I can see all those points, right? There's your front, there's your rear, there's your height. Okay, so I have multiple ways that I can control that element from the surface in Pro Tools, etc. Okay, so let's head forward. Let's take a look at the B3s, and let's take a look at some of those third-party plugins I thought would be really interesting to experiment with. I'm going to do the same thing we just did before, which is basically to spill the organs over to the right side, okay? So if we look at, let's just take a look at panning view here for a second. You see this. And we're going to solo the B3, and we're going to hit play. Now, here's the thing that's kind of fun that you can do. You can, and that's kind of low, but I'm going to recall something really quick here. You can take advantage of preview in Pro Tools and snapshots to actually try some different placements. So check this out. We're actually going to go into the automation stuff on the S4, and let's actually go. We're in preview. You can see I'm going to recall my first snapshot. I'm going to hit punch capture. Let's change the snapshot. Okay, so let's talk about this a second. So what are we doing here? Well, basically, we're isolating the B3s, and we want to go and actually look at some of these organ tracks, and I actually want to talk about some of the immersive processing. So if we specifically solo up the left and the right here, and there's two objects, right? There's the left and the right. Okay? But we're now going to view sends up here. So I'm just going to bring this into sends view, and we're going to push into one of those immersive reverbs that I talked about, specifically Stratus from Isotope, which is incredible. It's a really great space, and it can actually traverse beyond the standard 712 bed width into up to a 716. And so what we're going to look at is, let's actually just bring this in. Add some Stratus. And take a look at the renderer. Let's take a look at the actual plugin so you can kind of see what's going on here. So Stratus is living in a 716 mode with a phantom center. And it's really clever because if you actually scooch over here and take a look, basically I've got two auxes after that are assigned to stereo objects, right? And basically, check this out. This is being fed from the output of the plugin. So basically, it gives you extended precision beyond the 712 to be able to create an immersive reverb using this. And it's incredible. And you're basically expanding the precision of the Z, the elevation speakers, right? It's kind of what you're doing. So again, taking advantage of some really cool third-party tools. So let's head forward. Let's take a look at the bass, because the bass is it's just one track, but it's a good bass. You're gonna like the bass. So up here, right there. Okay, so let's solo up the bass for a second, and I'm gonna spill the bass just like we did before. And we're going to take a look at the panning on the bass. I'm going to attention it. It's going to show up in the center section. We're going to look at the 3D view so you can kind of see it. And let's just hit play. Same thing. Let's actually recall some presets here that I was messing with. And let's try this. And that's not the right one. That's the B3. I'm an idiot. Okay, so let's go back to the bass. So tools. Let's go back into bass, and let's recall this. Here we go. Let's go to the third one. Okay, so let me just change this once so you can see something really quick. See if you notice a difference. So we're going to punch this. If you take a look at the actual panner in Pro Tools, this is it's basically a mono source, and it's pulled off of the front wall, right? So front, rear, down. And it exists, right? It exists as an object that's playing back. You can see it right there, right? And there's some ambience as well. But we have the ability to actually switch into a bus mode, right? So what is this? Well, now it's green, and it's saying basically I'm no longer an object. I switched over. Now I'm going to a bass bus in this case, or it could be drums or strings or whatever. And I now have the ability to, I can add LFE. I can bring it back off of the wall, right? I can play with the center percentage. I can do all of this, and now this is basically, this is all about flexibility. Again, you don't have to do this. You don't have to have an object for every track in your session. It could be mono, it could be stereo, it could be static, it can be dynamic, but it could also be a bus, and a bus is also very useful. In this case, maybe I want to do this because I actually want to send to the LFE specifically for the bass, right? So just showing you the flexibility of being able to say, hey, I'm an object, and you can even automate, hey, I'm now a bus. You can literally, on the fly, change everything between buses and objects on the fly. So, a lot of cool stuff. One more thing I want to show you, if we've got time, there's, is the sax stack. So let's go to the horns real quick and see if I can do this quickly. Okay, so let's go to, okay, so I want to show you this really quick, because this is another concept that I think is important to use as a tool. So if we look at the sax elements, we'll just solo up the sax bus so I can see that really quick. There's a lot of drums and things in here. Okay, there's our sax bus. So take a look. I want to show you this, because this is kind of fun. You have the ability, again, another creative option. You have the ability to, if you want, to assign multiple tracks to the same objects. Why would you do that? Well, my sax bus are the altos. All the altos are going into the sax bus, and it's assigned to objects 35, 36. All of the berries are going to 35, 36 also. The reason I'm doing that is because in this case, I don't actually want them to be separate. I want to stack. And so the berries are going to be steered by the altos, right? You can have a bunch of people that are watching that top track, and you can see it's green to say I'm actually playing back, and everybody else is following me. So if I actually pan the altos, then the berries and everybody else should follow. So let's just see if that's true. And what did I do? Let's actually solo. Oh, sorry. I got to solo up my horns. Sorry. So attention now. Let's try this. So everybody is being steered as a stack, right? So again, it's just really a question of it's just a question of creatively, how do you want to use the tools? And there's a lot of different ways. And hopefully in that short period of time, you saw Atmos is an incredible tool. It's an incredible format. Whether you're doing theatrical stuff or music, there's now thousands of songs being remixed by Warner Brothers and Universal Music Group in Atmos. Some amazing, amazing stuff. Third-party ecosystem of AAX plugins that work in Pro Tools and Immersive. So super, super excited. How many people here have Pro Tools Ultimate? Okay. Anybody here working in Dolby Atmos yet? A couple people, okay. And do you guys have software or a dedicated renderer or? Dedicated renderer, okay. Who else has Pro Tools Ultimate? You do, and you do too, okay. You're about to jump in. Okay, well you can thank Dolby. You've got now a copy of Dolby Atmos Production Suite, which is the software-based renderer, which basically that in combination with Dolby Audio Bridge allows you to work in the box on the same workstation without having a dedicated renderer. It's really cool software workflows, but super powerful. So Dolby is giving us a stack. We're going to give one away each immersive session. So thanks to Dolby. So let's wrap up. There's a lot going on at the booth. One thing real quick, I'll call out Matrix Studio. It's our new baby brother to Matrix that I talked about. But this is even though it's a smaller 1U box and it has less functionality, we can still do up to 916 Atmos monitoring with room tuning on this hardware. So it's incredible. Digilink, IP audio, and full Atmos monitoring in that same way that you can do that with monitor profiles with Matrix. So it's an incredible box. Thanks a lot.